It was 3 a.m. at the Record Plant Studios in Los Angeles. The air smelled like cigarettes, expensive whiskey, and desperation. Studio A was booked for Queen. Studio B for the Sex Pistols. Two universes about to collide in the most violent way possible. Freddie Mercury was finishing vocal takes for We Are the Champions. His voice floated through the hallways like a ghost looking for a body to possess. Perfect, precise, untouchable. In the other studio, chaos reigned. Sid Vicious was screaming at the sound engineer, something about the bass being too low, too high, too something. The truth? Sid could barely play his bass, but nobody dared to say it out loud. The punk movement was at its peak. Anger was currency, destruction was art, and Sid Vicious was the poster boy for both. Queen, on the other hand, represented everything punk despised. Theatrical, polished, operatic, too much talent, too much control, two philosophies, one building. The collision was inevitable, and Freddie Mercury knew it. What he didn't know was that this night would become legend. A story whispered in studios for decades. The night the Queen trolled the punk prince and changed everything. Freddie was in his element that night. Silk kimono, vodka tonic, that dangerous smile playing on his lips. He just nailed a vocal run that made the entire production team stop breathing. Brian May looked at him with something between admiration and fear. "That's the one," the engineer said through the talkback. Freddie nodded. He knew. He always knew, but then he heard it. A crash from the hallway. Glass breaking, someone shouting. The studio door burst open. Sid Vicious stumbled in, leather jacket hanging off one shoulder, eyes glazed, cigarette dangling from his lips. Behind him, Malcolm McLaren, the Sex Pistols manager, looking annoyed. "Wrong studio, Sid," Malcolm muttered, but Sid wasn't listening. His eyes locked onto Freddie, and for a moment, the room froze. "So this is what a real studio looks like?" Sid sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "All these pretty lights, all these expensive toys." Freddie didn't move, didn't blink. Just watched Sid with the calm of a cat watching a mouse. "It's called professionalism, darling," Freddie said softly. That word, darling, landed like a slap. Sid's face darkened. "Professionalism? You mean selling out?" The room tensed. Brian May stood up slowly. Roger Taylor put down his drumsticks, but Freddie just smiled. That smile that meant trouble. "Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact." "Selling out," Freddie repeated, standing up slowly. The kimono fell perfectly around him like armor made of silk. "Is that what you call it when people actually want to hear your music?" Sid took a step forward. Malcolm grabbed his arm, but Sid shook him off. "Your music is for housewives and accountants," Sid spat. "Punk is real. Punk is dangerous." Freddie walked closer. Close enough to smell the cheap beer on Sid's breath. "Dangerous?" Freddie's voice dropped to a whisper. "Darling, I'm more dangerous in heels than you'll ever be with that safety pin in your nose." The room held its breath. Sid's hand curled into a fist, but Freddie didn't flinch. He leaned in even closer. "Tell me something, Sid," Freddie said. "Can you actually play that bass you carry around like a weapon?" Direct hit. Everyone in the room knew the truth. Sid's technical skills were minimal at best. "I play what needs to be played," Sid growled. "Nothing more, nothing less." Freddie's smile widened. "Then let's make this interesting." He walked to the grand piano in the corner of Studio A. His fingers danced across the keys. A simple blues progression. "Your studio is free, yes, Studio B?" Malcolm nodded, confused about where this was going. "Wonderful," Freddie purred. "Here's what we're going to do." He played another cascade of notes. "You, me, 1 hour. We'll swap studios, swap instruments, swap styles. I'll record a punk song in your studio. You record something refined in mine, and we'll see who's really just pretending." The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Sid should have walked away. Any sober person would have. But Sid Vicious was not sober, and his ego was bigger than his talent. "You're on," Sid said, and with those 2 words he sealed his fate. Freddie's eyes gleamed. The game had begun. Word spread through the record plant like wildfire. Freddie Mercury versus Sid Vicious. Studio swap. Style swap. Within minutes, the hallways were packed. Engineers, producers, assistants, musicians from other sessions. Everyone wanted to witness this. Malcolm McLaren tried to talk Sid out of it. "This is a mistake," Malcolm whispered urgently. "Mercury is setting you up." But Sid was already walking towards Studio A, the Queen studio, where everything was precise, professional, perfect. Freddie, meanwhile, strolled into Studio B, the Sex Pistols' domain, where cables snaked across the floor like dead serpents, where cigarette burns scarred every surface, where chaos was the aesthetic. "Charming," Freddie murmured, looking around. He spotted Sid's bass leaning against an amplifier, picked it up, felt its weight, tested a few notes. Out of tune, obviously. Freddie smiled. Perfect. In Studio A, Sid was facing a different reality. Everything was organized, labeled, clean. The piano gleamed under the studio lights, microphones positioned with surgical precision. "Where do I even start?" Sid muttered. Brian May, who'd stayed behind to watch, said nothing, just watched with quiet amusement. Freddie had already thought 5 steps ahead. He always did. He'd instructed his engineer to give Sid full access to everything. "Let him touch whatever he wants," Freddie had said. "The more rope we give him, the more he'll hang himself." In Studio B, Freddie was already working. He'd tuned Sid's bass in about 30 seconds, plugged it in, adjusted the amp, and started laying down a bass line. Simple, aggressive, raw. But underneath it, structure, rhythm, precision. The engineer watching him looked stunned. "How are you?" "Darling, I've been playing piano since I was 7, Freddie said. "Every instrument is just a different conversation with the same language." He added a vocal track, snarling, angry, dripping with punk attitude. But even in the aggression, there was control, melody hidden inside the chaos. 15 minutes. That's all it took. A complete punk track, raw enough to be credible, good enough to be undeniable. In Studio A, Sid was struggling. He'd sat at the piano, pressed a few keys. They sounded fine, but what was he supposed to do with them? "Just play something," the engineer suggested. "Something refined." Sid stared at the keys like they were a foreign language. Because they were. He knew 3 chords on bass, maybe 4 on a good day. But this was different. This required actual skill. He started pressing keys randomly. No rhythm, no melody, no structure, just noise pretending to be music. The engineer winced. Brian May looked away. Even Sid knew he was losing. Badly. 45 minutes later, they reconvened in the main lounge. The crowd had grown. Someone had called people from other studios. This was history happening in real time. Freddie walked in first, still wearing that kimono, still holding his vodka tonic, looking like he just finished a casual afternoon tea. "Shall we?" he said, gesturing toward the playback room. Sid followed, trying to look confident, but his hands were shaking. He knew what was coming. They played Freddie's track first, the one he'd recorded in Sid's studio. Using Sid's bass, Sid's equipment, Sid's aesthetic. The speakers erupted. Raw, aggressive, angry. Everything punk was supposed to be, but with something extra. Something that made it impossible to ignore. It was good. Undeniably, frustratingly good. The crowd murmured appreciation. Even Malcolm McLaren nodded reluctantly. Freddie had understood the assignment and exceeded it. "Your turn," Freddie said, looking at Sid, his voice gentle, almost sympathetic. They played Sid's recording, the one he'd attempted in Studio A. 5 seconds in, people started looking at the floor. 10 seconds in, someone coughed uncomfortably. 20 seconds in, the engineer mercifully stopped the playback. It was worse than anyone expected. Random notes. No structure. No melody. The musical equivalent of a child banging on pots and pans. Sid's face was red, his jaw clenched. "Technical difficulties," he muttered. "The piano was out of tune." "No, darling," Freddie said softly. "The piano was perfect." He let that hang in the air. "The difference between us isn't the instruments. It's not the studio. It's not even the style." Freddie walked closer to Sid. "The difference is that I respect music, all music, even music I don't personally make. I understand that destruction without construction is just noise." He paused. "And you don't." The room was silent. Sid looked like he wanted to swing, but something in Freddie's eyes stopped him. Not fear, not aggression, just certainty, the absolute confidence of someone who knew his worth. And knew you knew it too. Sid left the record plant 20 minutes later. Didn't say goodbye, didn't acknowledge anyone, just walked out into the Los Angeles night. Malcolm McLaren followed, already planning damage control. The Sex Pistols would implode within the year. Sid would be dead within 2. But that night, something shifted. Not just for Sid, for everyone who witnessed what happened. Freddie stayed at the studio for another 3 hours, working, perfecting, creating, because that's what he did. But before he left, he did something unexpected. He found the engineer from Studio B. "That track we made," Freddie said, "the punk one. I want you to destroy it." The engineer looked shocked. "But it's brilliant. We could destroy it," Freddie repeated. "This wasn't about making music. It was about making a point." He finished his drink. "And the point has been made." The story spread through the music world like lightning. Freddie Mercury trolling Sid Vicious. The Queen humiliating the punk prince. But that's not how Freddie saw it. "I didn't humiliate him," Freddie told Brian May later. "He humiliated himself the moment he thought attitude could replace ability. I just held up a mirror." The incident became legend. Whispered in recording studios, told to young musicians as a cautionary tale. Don't confuse attitude with talent. Don't mistake destruction for creativity. And never, ever challenge someone who's already mastered what you're still pretending to understand. Years later, after both Freddie and Sid were gone, someone found a bootleg recording. Not of that night's challenge, but of Freddie in Studio B. Before the swap, before the confrontation. Just Freddie, alone, playing Sid's bass, and on the tape, you can hear him say something to the engineer. "You know what's sad? This kid has access to all of this, all these instruments, all this equipment, all this opportunity, and he thinks the rebellion is in rejecting it. The real rebellion is mastering it, and using it to say something that actually matters." Then he started playing. And the music that came out was beautiful, even on a punk bass, even in a chaos studio. Because Freddie Mercury understood something fundamental. Music doesn't care about your attitude. It doesn't care about your image. It only cares about whether you respect it enough to learn its language. And once you speak that language, you can say anything. The record plant closed its doors in 1987, but the story never died. Ask any session musician who worked in LA during the late 70s. They'll tell you about that night. The details change. The names sometimes blur, But the lesson remains crystal clear. Talent beats attitude, skill beats image, and respect for the craft beats everything. Freddie never spoke publicly about the incident. When asked in interviews about punk music, he'd smile that knowing smile. "I think rebellion is important," he'd say, "but rebellion without substance is just a tantrum. And I stopped having tantrums when I was 7. The tape of Freddie's punk track was never officially released. According to legend, only 3 people ever heard it complete: the engineer, Brian May, and Freddie himself. But sometimes in the quiet hours of high-end studios around the world, an engineer will tell the story, and they'll say the same thing. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about showing that true artistry has no boundaries, no limits. Only frauds need to stay in their lane. Masters can drive anywhere they want. Today, both Freddie Mercury and Sid Vicious are gone. One died as a legend, the other as a cautionary tale. But on that night in 1977, at the record plant in Los Angeles, something important was proven. You can dress in safety pins and leather. You can spit and snarl and destroy hotel rooms. You can call yourself dangerous and rebellious and real. But when you're standing in front of a microphone, in front of an instrument, in front of the music itself, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is whether you can deliver. And Freddie Mercury could always deliver. That night, he didn't just troll Sid Vicious. He taught everyone watching a lesson that echoes through every recording studio to this day. Respect the craft, master your instrument, and never confuse confidence with competence. Because music doesn't lie. It doesn't care about your image. It only reveals the truth. And that night, the truth was undeniable. The king could play punk, but the punk couldn't play king. Some people spend their whole lives pretending to be something they're not. Freddie Mercury spent his proving he could be anything he wanted. And that's the difference between a pose and a performance, between a moment and a legacy. Between noise and music, the record plant may be gone, but somewhere in the shadows of every studio, you can still hear that bass line, the one Freddie played that night. Simple, aggressive, perfect. A reminder that true artistry has no limits. Only pretenders do. If this story of musical mastery and legendary trolling moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to understand that talent always speaks louder than attitude. What's your favorite Freddie Mercury moment? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more untold stories about the legends who shaped music history.